Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 8th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. India's aviation sector faced major disruptions and hundreds of flight cancellations until Saturday due to heightened tensions with Pakistan. This instability also impacted the Indian stock market, with the Nifty 50 and Sensex closing in the red on May 8. The Nifty 50 dropped 0.58% to 24,273.8, and the Sensex fell 0.51% to 80,000. Despite this, foreign investors turned net long on Indian index futures for the first time in 7 months. Prashanth Menon, Tesla's India country head, resigned as the company prepares to launch electric cars there. India may also negotiate a trade deal with the US, potentially reducing tariffs, addressing US President Donald Trump's tariff King Kong. Escalating tensions between India and Pakistan, involving drones and missiles, are fostering regional instability in Pakistan. Analysts anticipate potential market reactions to strikes against Pakistan, but hope for quick de-escalation. Turning to the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump offered to mediate the terrible conflict between India and Pakistan following a massacre in Kashmir. Trump also referred to India as a potential tariff king, a perception India may be ready to address through a trade deal. China is navigating a complex economic and geopolitical environment marked by trade friction with the United States and internal economic restructuring. To combat economic headwinds, China has introduced stimulus measures, including a 10 basis point reduction in its key policy rate and a 50 basis point decrease in the reserve requirement ratio. However, investors remain cautious, primarily focused on potential U.S. tariff rollbacks and ongoing trade negotiations. China has voiced its disapproval of existing U.S. tariffs and has cautioned against leveraging trade talks to exert increased pressure. Trade discussions, initiated at the request of the U.S., are planned for Switzerland, where Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer will meet with their Chinese counterpart. The U.S.-China trade dispute is already impacting various sectors, with Maersk, a major shipping company, revising its container market forecast downward due to tariff-related pressures, and the geoduck harvesting sector experiencing adverse effects. CEO Lisa Su has underscored the significance of the Chinese market, cautioning against stringent U.S. chip restrictions that could impede widespread adoption, advocating for a balanced approach that considers national security. Shifting to international relations, Chinese defense stocks saw a rise following reports that Pakistan had utilized Chinese-made weaponry to shoot down Indian jets, amid escalating tensions between the two nations. Former Senator David Perdue has been sworn in as Trump's ambassador to China, before high-stakes trade talks aimed at de-escalating tensions between Washington and Beijing. The United States is grappling with economic fallout from tariffs implemented by the Trump administration. The Port of Los Angeles reported import arrivals down by over a third year-over-year. Business leaders largely view these tariffs as a major threat, urging de-escalation. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HKMA, also expressed concerns about increased inflation and economic growth uncertainty due to these tariffs. Despite these economic headwinds, jobless claims fell following a spring recess spike. Venture capital funding in the U.S. reached $91.50 billion last quarter, outpacing the Asia-Pacific region sevenfold, which saw a decade low in venture capital investment, according to a KPMG report. In positive developments, the US and UK are reportedly close to finalizing a trade deal, potentially to be unveiled by President Trump, boosting Dow futures by 300 points. United Kingdom's Bank of England has cut its main interest rate by 0.25% to 4.25% in response to worries about global growth shocks from the Trump administration's tariff policies. Concurrently, reports suggest that the US and UK are nearing a trade agreement, potentially announced by President Trump soon, contributing to a rally in European stocks. Hong Kong's stock market saw gains following Beijing's announcement of economic support measures. This coincided with upcoming US-China trade discussions and the Federal Reserve holding interest rates steady. However, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HKMA, warned of persistent uncertainty, particularly citing concerns that President Trump's tariffs have amplified worries about US inflation and economic growth. Australia's exchange operator is proposing reforms to initial public offerings, IPOs, to stimulate listing activity. United States President Trump announced a comprehensive trade deal with the UK. He also indicated that a date has been set for trade talks with China. Turning to the United Kingdom, optimism surrounding the UK-US trade deal has boosted British equities. Investors are closely monitoring the Bank of England's upcoming rate decision. Care Trust Wright anticipates adding $68.60 million in annual rent after closing a UK acquisition. Phil Ventures has urged action to prevent a UK exodus following Deliveroo's £2.90 billion sale. Centrica is considering raising dividends. Pear, Yala and Diageo are among the beneficiaries of the newly signed UK-India trade deal. In Ukraine, the country and the US have finalized a minerals agreement. Ukragro believes Ukraine has the potential to establish a stable financial market for corn within the European Union. European stocks presented a mixed picture, swayed by corporate earnings, central bank moves, and the prospect of trade agreements. Optimism around a potential UK-US trade deal initially fueled rallies. Later, hints of a major trade deal from President Trump again lifted spirits. Market closings also occurred amid careful evaluation of corporate profits and anticipation of the Federal Reserve's rate decision. The New York Times explored the challenges faced by European businesses in navigating President Trump's trade war, gathering first-hand accounts of coping with tariffs. DGR's acquisition of the Polish firm Savangard establishes a new integration services hub in Northern Europe. Robinhood Markets plans to expand its U.S. securities tokenization services to its European user base. China's advancements in energy storage and grid-forming technologies could offer solutions to power outages in Europe. Across Asia, stock markets presented a varied landscape, initially buoyed by Wall Street's upswing and the Federal Reserve's unchanged interest rates, but later tempered by cautious market analysis. The rising values of Asian currencies are providing a considerable boost to the wealth management sector for Asian banks. Trade talks between China and the US, along with the advantageous effects of a UK agreement on the FTC, are driving gains in stock markets across Asia and Europe. In the financial sphere, Asian paints reported a substantial 45% year-over-year drop in consolidated net profit for the fourth quarter, settling at Yoga 692.3 crore. Concurrently, revenue saw a decrease of 4.3% compared to the previous year, largely due to softened demand for decorative coatings. Offsetting this, the industrial segment of Asian paints demonstrated growth. To reward investors, the company has proposed a final dividend of $20.55 per share. India's relations with Pakistan have deteriorated, leading to significant disruptions. India reportedly closed more than 25 airports near the Pakistani border amid rising tensions. The Pakistan Stock Exchange faced a brief trading halt as the CSE 100 index sharply declined by 6.3%. Pakistan has credited Chinese J-10C fighter jets with successfully deterring alleged Indian incursions. This claim boosted stock values for Chinese defense firms like Chengdu Aircraft. Unconfirmed reports of downed Indian Rafale jets have further stirred market activity. Moreover, India is exploring strategies to pressure Pakistan by re-evaluating its commitment to a river-sharing agreement and challenging Pakistan's eligibility for foreign assistance. Turning to Pakistan's economic landscape, the nation launched its inaugural Sharia-compliant Green Sukuk. This initiative aims to attract investment focused on environmentally sustainable projects. Russia faces increasing international scrutiny as the EU aims to eliminate Russian gas imports, a move Russia deems economically self-destructive, particularly for Eastern European nations dependent on Russian energy. Strengthening ties between President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping signal a potential shift in global power dynamics away from U.S. dominance. Well's recent visit to Moscow, following attacks between Russia and Ukraine, coincided with preparations for Russia's World War II parade. Economically, Russia's budget deficit has expanded, reaching 1.5% of GDP from January to April due to increased government spending. On a more positive note, potato prices are expected to decrease in July, driven by a combination of strong harvests and increased imports. Ukrainian drone attacks have targeted Moscow airports, especially during gatherings of Putin's allies, underscoring the persistent tensions and security vulnerabilities within Russia. Saudi Arabia is seeing increased economic activity and investment. Flynas, the Saudi Arabian airline, announced an IPO to fund its expansion. The Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund is boosting its investments in women's professional golf. As in pay reports that the Tadawul Stock Exchange is central to Saudi Arabia's economic transformation. Saudi Arabia tops the MENA region in IPOs with 12 listings, and the logistics sector is poised to gain. Raymond James Financial Inc. invested $619,000 in the iShares MSCI Saudi Arabia ETF Nasir Kakase, signaling further financial confidence. Turning to the United States, the Trump administration plans to officially refer to the Persian Gulf as the Arabian Gulf during an upcoming visit to the Middle East. This policy shift addresses a long-standing dispute for many Arab nations. United Kingdom's film and television sector faces growing anxiety. The industry fears potential tariffs on foreign films imposed by Donald Trump. These tariffs would compound existing problems. Pandemic-related shutdowns and Hollywood strikes have already strained the industry. Meanwhile, in the United States, TikTok executives are working to calm advertisers. Concerns are mounting over a possible ban of the app. This ban could occur under a new federal law. Cartoon Weiss, TikTok's VP of Global Business Solutions, spoke to advertisers. She aimed to reassure them about TikTok's future in the U.S. She did not explicitly mention the potential ban. The United States recently faced air travel disruptions at Newark Liberty International Airport after a brief radar and communications outage. The 30-second blackout led to flight delays and cancellations. Authorities attributed the disruption to a combination of staffing shortages and technological glitches. David Grizzle, a former FAA crew, weighed in, highlighting systemic issues within the U.S. air traffic control infrastructure and suggesting possible improvements. United Arab Emirates-based Emirates Airline announced a record annual profit of $5.20 billion, solidifying its position as a leading global carrier. Expanding its entertainment offerings, a Disney theme park is slated for development in the United Arab Emirates, funded by an Abu Dhabi developer on Yas Island. This park will join existing attractions like SeaWorld and a major water park already located on Yas Island. South Africa is implementing reforms to bolster governance and economic inclusion. A program targeting struggling municipalities aims to improve service delivery and local governance. The government also introduced a transformation fund to foster economic inclusivity by aiding marginalized communities and promoting economic empowerment. The South African rand saw a slight dip after previous gains, reflecting market reaction to economic conditions domestically and globally. Analysts are closely watching factors influencing South African markets. Brazil's central bank continues its battle against inflation with another interest rate hike of 50 basis points. The increase pushes borrowing costs to levels not seen in nearly 2 decades. Meanwhile, a new de-escalation fund is poised to inject up to $15 into Brazil's vital minerals supply chain. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government faces increasing scrutiny over its handling of rising inflation. Recent polls indicate growing public dissatisfaction with the government's economic policies. The opposition parties are calling for immediate action to address the cost of living crisis affecting many Canadian families. In France, President Emmanuel Macron is pushing forward with controversial pension reforms. These reforms aim to raise the retirement age, sparking widespread protests and strikes across the country. Union leaders have vowed to continue their opposition, raising concerns about potential social unrest. Germany is grappling with an energy crisis exacerbated by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The government is implementing measures to reduce energy consumption and diversify its sources of supply. Chancellor Olaf Scholz is also seeking to reassure citizens about energy security ahead of the winter month. Japan sees space, startup Axel Space, aiming for a June IPO, a sign of the sector's growing financial ambitions. Simultaneously, MetaPlanet has made a substantial Bitcoin purchase, acquiring 555 BTC, while a regulatory filing for NCSR Japan, smaller capitalizer, was submitted for the period ending February 28. China's exporters are proactively adapting to the U.S. trade war by identifying alternative markets, with Egypt emerging as a potential key destination, as they seek to bypass tariffs while continuing to serve U.S. customers. The United States Federal Reserve has held interest rates steady in the face of economic headwinds from the trade war. The Trump administration once considered deporting undocumented migrants to Libya. In more positive news, a trade agreement has been reached between the U.S. and the United Kingdom, leading to gains in Dow futures. Turning to Canada, the S&P TSX Composite Index saw a rise of 0.75% as the country's stocks closed higher. Shopify is predicting second quarter revenue figures that will surpass market forecasts. In diplomatic news, Prince Faisal bin Salman welcomed the Bahraini ambassador to Saudi Arabia, reflecting ongoing ties between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. Indonesia is the scene of potential major business deal, with Grab reportedly exploring the acquisition of Goto during the second quarter. Kazakhstan has confirmed that it will maintain its current oil production levels for May, a decision made amidst ongoing deliberations within the OPEC's framework. Information is circulating regarding how to engage in stock trading within the Philippines. Syria is reportedly receiving financial support from Qatar, which is funding salaries for the public sector in the country. Germany has seen an increase in factory orders, occurring just before the implementation of U.S. tariffs. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.